Okay, so this video actually is going to wrap up the build for the Edmund Fitzgerald. This little model came a long way, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute. But before I do that, I just want to give you a little bit of information about the build itself. So the model is made in 1/400 scale, and I actually used 12 by 12 sheets of 1 inch thick wood, veneer wood, that I had gotten off Amazon. So I got a stack. I think there was like 12 of them. So what I did was I stacked them together and I glued them and I clamped them, and I was able to carve out the hull. So these are actually, I don't know if you can see it if you look closely, they're actually 1/8 individual sheets that I had clamped together and cut, and then I had to glue the sections. You could see a seam here if you really look, and then a seam here. Well, I did the bow section, I did the stern, and then I did the central part of the ship, and I had to glue everything together. So originally this started, let me show you guys. I had wanted to do a tribute to the Edmund Fitzgerald, to her and her crew, and they don't really have a model kit of the Edmund Fitzgerald. They have like a 3D printed thing you can get, but it's just ridiculously expensive, and I'm not crazy about that 3D stuff, the printed stuff. I had gotten this only because I didn't have a representation of the ship, and I really wanted one. This was in 400 scale. Let me just show you a little bit what I'm talking about. And this really turned me off to the paper models. I mean, yeah, it was cheap. It was only, I think it was $14, and it took 6 months to come here from China. But when you look at the model, this is the Edmund Fitzgerald, and a lot of the colors are off, and a lot of the deck fixtures and the locations and the little things here and there are off. So I was like, well, you know, this gave me the template for the hull, and I'm thinking, well, what if I were to make it out of wood instead of doing a paper model, because she'll be a lot more sturdy, she'll last a lot longer, and I can make her more accurate to the actual ship. So what I did was, like I had said, I had taken some of the, let me put this to the side, I had taken like the hull section, and the body, and the bow section is in here somewhere as well. But anyway, I had taken the basic shape of the ship, and this was going to be in 1/400 scale, so I knew this was in 1/400 scale. So I was like, okay, so now I know I got the scale right. So what I did was, after I took the basic shape, I had done the trace out for the ship, for the hull. Now this is a waterline model. I did end up getting the ship plans, the shipbuilding plans for the Edmund Fitzgerald, but I got that after, and that actually helped me with a lot of the structures that went onto the deck, where the boathouse is, going along, the lights, the anchor, not the anchor crane, I'm sorry, the hatch cover crane, going back to the coal bunker, the way the lifeboats are, the davits that are on the side. So the plans helped me out a lot with the ship. Also, the plans actually had the colors on it as well. So I figured, you know, I'll do that instead. I'll do something that's going to last, and it's a little more intimate, or something that would be a little more special to the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So, and you can see, I mean, it was yellow where it was supposed to be white. The hull was brown, and it just really didn't look like the ship at all. So let me put this to the side. So I had wanted to do something special. So I had done the hull. The first things that I had done was I had done the bow, and I did the stern. Once that was cut out and I was happy with the shape, I had done the midsection of the ship. Again, these are all from the clamped 1x8, 12x12 sheets of wood. So once the basic ship was done, the hull, I was able to build off it. So I had done the front first, where the wheelhouse is, and I had used the plans as best as I could because of it was tough because it was small. But the wheelhouse looks a little different than that. I wasn't able to put the visor around the front, or the bridge wings like on the Edmund Fitzgerald that's in the plans. I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't have the room. So basically, this is my first scratch build model, and I'd like to improve off her. Someday I would like to do a full hull build of the Edmund Fitzgerald out of wood. And I want to make it larger because I'll be able to put more detail on. So once the boathouse was done, I had put the radar and the tower on, and also had a couple of generators and pumps, and the lifeboat went right behind the wheelhouse. So then I decided we were going to put in the anchors. So the anchors on a Fitzgerald, they don't like overhang like they would on an ocean liner or a battleship. They're actually retracted up into the openings. So I used the 1/400 scale anchors off of a battleship, and it actually ended up really fitting. And incidentally, the bowsprit came from the same battleship, and this was actually a gun, a barrel of a gun, but I thought it made a really good bowsprit. It was in 1/400 scale, so I was able to use the railing that went around, and what I did was I used the little photo etch, little portholes, and the windows to kind of make her look as close to the Edmund Fitzgerald as I could, considering her size. So then we come down to the back, and she had 2 staircases because she had 3 levels. She had the wheelhouse, or the bridge. She had a deck below that, and then she had a deck that was underneath, and she had the staircase and the 2 doors on the bottom. And then we have the railing, and we've got the hatch covers to cover the hatch. Of course, she would have been filled with iron ore. When she headed on her final journey, she would have been weighted down, and she had 26,000 tons of iron ore that she was bringing across the lake. That's when she ran into the storm. But the crane, the hatch cover crane, I actually used photo etch from the RMS Titanic. One of the Titanic builds that I had done, she had railing and she had different parts, and I figured, you know, that would make a good anchor crane. So what I did was I took the railings and I bridged it out. I used railings from, and you could see the crane. Those would be the cargo cranes that I had made the sides with, and the railings. So that's how I came up with the hatch cover crane. Of course, the hatch cover crane was mobile to all of the hatches, and when a ship was at sea, the hatch cover crane would have been back here, stationary, but I didn't want to block the name, so that's why I put it over here. In addition to the handrails to keep the crew safe, there were lights going along the bottom of the deck, or the top of the deck. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each side, and this is according to the blueprint. So I really wanted to light them, but there was just no way because the wood, the hull was solid wood. I thought about hollowing out and going from underneath, but it would just be too much. If I do a bigger model of her, I am definitely going to light her. So then we put the hatch covers onto the deck, and coming around to the stern section, again you can see the area where they came together. So we had done the stern, and she had that little, she's got like a little indentation of the hull, And she has an overhang, and underneath the overhang there are doors that you can go on the inside. And above that, the face of the back of the ship has 2 life preservers, one on either side, and it's got the name Edmund Fitzgerald in the middle. Just above that would be the coal bunker. And beyond that is the aft deck house. And then we've got the smokestack. Now what I did with the star, because she had a star on the smokestack, and the colors were yellow and red, and they had a red star on it. So what I did was I used photo etch to actually cut out the star and then paint it and put it on. The only thing I got left to do is there was a white C, a faint white C inside of the star according to the blueprints. So I think that's the only thing that I'll eventually end up doing. But moving on again, because this is in 1/400 scale, I was able to use lifeboats from the Battleship model kit. And this is in scale with the lifeboats on the ship, and this is where they were actually placed on either side. They also had these, one on each side. It was almost like a davit. I'm not quite sure what they were for, but they were on the plan, so I put it in. On the top they had vents and water tanks and generators that were on the top deck with the funnel. And on the back I had put a bench for me to enjoy the ride, only because yeah, I wanted to enjoy the lakes, the sunset and stuff, and the voyages. So that's a little 1/400 scale Titanic photo etch bench that I used. So again, I had put the railing. We went around the edge. The same thing, I used the portholes, the little photo etch portholes, and these I actually drilled in. When it came to making the back of the stern, she has like a couple of levels. There would have been like a little overhang coming off the back, but I wasn't quite sure how to do that without really making it look terrible. And again, the bigger model that I'll eventually do, I'll put the overhang on. But I used, this is the 1/8 wood that I had stacked up and put onto the hull, and then I kind of built them up with the little pillars to kind of give her the appearance like she has. Once that was finished, we went ahead and we painted it, and I used the Vallejo red, and I used the Vallejo primer, the black. That was fantastic, the way it stuck to the wood and it helped the paint. And I used the Vallejo white onto the ship. Also with the Vallejo, I used the matte finish or the matte varnish to put all over the whole thing. So once the ship was painted, what I needed to do was I put the rigging. Now there's not a whole lot of rigging on the Edmund Fitzgerald, but there is some. Like in the front where the tower is, a little bit of rigging that goes down to the bowsprit. And on the back, they've got a little bit of rigging that comes down to either side of the deck house where the smokestack is, and one that goes back to the aft end. They also have a flag, and it's kind of small, so I didn't put the flags out. Again, if I do a larger model, I'll put the flags on it. But once she was all painted and the mast was on, the rigging was on, then I had to think about doing the lettering. So I'm thinking, okay, what if I do it freehand? And I'm thinking, if I do it freehand, chances are it's going to come out really terrible, and it just won't look neat. And I had really prided myself on trying to make this model look respectable for the crew and the ship, where I don't want it to be like a joke. I mean, I know there's a lot wrong with this model, but my heart was in the right place to try to do a tribute for the crew and for this magnificent ship. So I decided, instead of doing it freehand, I ended up getting 1/400 scale letters. And what it is there's a sheet that just has a bunch of letters on it, grouped together, and I had to go and cut them out individually. So each letter had to be put out individually. And yes, it was a pain, but the end result didn't look too bad. It was in scale, so it's in 1/400 scale, right down to the writing that's on the front where the coal bunker is. So once I had finished each section, I had gone and I had spritzed it with the Wheelhouse varnish, the matte finish, just in that area, and I let it dry. Then when it comes to the stern of the Edmund Fitzgerald, they had these same sheets, but they were white. So it's the same thing except they were white. And this was a little bit harder because it was harder to see. So the stern of the Edmund Fitzgerald has Edmund Fitzgerald, and on the bottom, below that, it has Milwaukee. So I had wanted to make sure that that was going to be there because that was a big part of her stern. And one of the things that makes it look really off is that I think that's the stern anchor, and it's off. It's off center. I think I just did a lousy job on centering it. And this round thing up top, I'm not quite sure what that is, but it is there. So I had to put that on. But you can see Edmund Fitzgerald from Milwaukee. So once that was on, incidentally, the lights that I had put on, these were actually paper clips. What I did was I cut the paper clips and I drilled a small hole, 1/8 inch hole, into the deck, and I put them in, and then I painted them white, just so they would, match the lighting on the Edmund Fitzgerald deck. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to tell you about that. But after that was done, what I did was I took the Wheelhouse matte finish and I put a total of probably about 3 coats, because I was going to put one and then I had extra, and then I just wanted to use everything that was in the paint gun so I wouldn't waste it. So all in all, it's 3 coats of the Wheelhouse matte finish. And what I like about it is it kind of deepens the color, makes it richer. And that was the conclusion of the build part of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So we can go ahead and we'll take a look at her in the light, and we'll present her to you guys. Alright, so we can see her a little bit better in the sunlight. It is November. I had wanted to finish her in November, fittingly. On the 49th anniversary this year of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald and the loss of her crew. So you can see the back of the ship, the stern. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and we'll just take a look at the ship. My friends, thank you so much for the kind words and the encouragement. And thank you so much for watching. And until my next video, I'll talk to you soon.